All righty. Well, welcome everybody. This is Cambridge Inside Out on April 20th, 2021. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans.
And, it's sort of interesting times. I think maybe I will make a few little announcements about things that came out of the city today.
Okay, yes, you're more ahead than I am. Yeah.
Probably the easy one, but something that's a little near and dear to us is that they did finally announce that the curbside composting, the organics collection is going to restart on May 17th.
I had heard that actually in a I'd heard that in a meeting before, but I wasn't definite. So now it's announced. Great. Yeah.
Yeah. So that anyway, so that's ready to rock and roll. And perhaps the biggest late breaking news from the city of Cambridge was that one of the things that has been long awaited has been this digital equity study.
Okay.
It's kind of long in coming, and it's now they put out a press release. I have a link to it.
Good.
That people can download it, or you can even request a copy of it.
Okay.
And I think by most
you can request a copy of the 200.
You can actually get a physical copy as well. And,
I would like that. Yeah.
And just yes, as would I. So I'll
actually just one of us. You can get it, and I'll borrow yours.
Okay. But this is, I think, largely seen as the first step that comes before, and I could have some of the details wrong because this is not my big burning issue.
Right. Yeah.
Is to have a digital equity study, and then from there, the broadband feasibility study that the council has been demanding for some time. They're actually separate matters.
They are, but one feeds into the other, which some of the people that are gung-ho and let's get municipal didn't want to see connected, but they are, because the people that are most disenfranchised, I think, from internet or from cost are people that can't afford it, and a lot of them are in public housing and whatever. So this digital equity study really is looking at that, right?
And also, if you look at the rhetoric that comes out of the group that's primarily pushing for the broadband, municipal broadband, they often quote the need for digital equity and to reach people who can, especially the lessons learned during COVID in terms of access to education.
And actually, the people working on this, I assume it's the same people. Back in, let's see, it was November, the meeting that Patty Nolan had talked about this. Although the council member that were very annoyed. Well, what about the municipal broadband? But they pointed out, they did studies in the housing and they saw the need there. So to me, let's get that done. I mean, I'd like to see competition, but a lot of people can afford to get internet here. And you brought up the one of the comments about the new money coming out of the federal government and how some of the leaders of this movement say, oh, now we can get money from the government.
We can tap into that. Yeah.
Please, that's not for us.
Yeah, it is.
That's for people that really need it out there in areas that schools don't have it. I mean,
going back like into the Franklin Delano Roosevelt there, where they were talking about rural electrification. Wouldn't it be great if Cambridge said we'd like to put all of our electrical infrastructure underground?
Where did
meanwhile
cable
people
come
in
from?
Tennessee didn't have power at all, right?
Yeah, cable originated in rural. I mean, that's how cable originated. All cable TV, but I just, come on. We do need competition. We do need a better, people should have choices, but let's get people that really need it, like the kids and people that, I can't pay the $80 a month or whatever. There's plenty of people here that will pay it because they can do it. It's become a utility that you have to have. Okay.
Yeah, actually, and I've seen some very interesting arguments made that, the cable and internet access, actually, there was even an opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas, of all people, basically to sort of, kind of an answer back to some of the people who are pretty wrong-headed about these things, saying that it has to be viewed as a so-called common carrier. And I think that's kind of right. And it's sort of become that. I don't know if it started out that way. Certainly my experience with internet began just being a university guy, and it was something that the military and the academic world kind of, But then again, back in those days, people didn't have personal computers at home either.
No.
You know,
Oh,
but the
right.
world changed when the PC
Right.
showed up on everybody's desk and in their phones, especially. You know.
Well, yeah, not in your phone, but yeah, you don't have one. But,
exactly. Yeah. But
it
by
is
the way,
amazing.
I haven't unplugged mine, so if it rings during the
Oh,
broadcast,
okay, right, yeah.
I'll have to run over there to shut it off.
Okay.
So anyway, so those are sort of big things. I want to just mention a couple of personal things here, though.
Yeah.
You know, first off, is today was vaccination.
Yeah, you got your card.
Dose number 2, so I'm now fully equipped with superpowers.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so it's kind of a great feeling actually to know that, you know, that I'm now a part of the club.
Yeah.
You know, just, I mean, I guess you're the full effect
I'm fully
of the
immunized. Yeah,
vaccination.
you have to wait 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the liberation of being able to actually go and sit and have a few beers with people, which you can do now anyway. But the thing is that to do it without any realistic concerns.
I'm still concerned about going inside and sitting with a lot of other people talking and eating. You can't eat with a mask. And I told you I went to a movie for the first time at the Kendall. I took a chance, but but no one talks in a movie. There were 6 people. I trusted it, and I was fully immunized, and people wore masks. But I did it mainly because, you're not talking in a movie, and I trusted the air was, whatever.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So that's a pretty big thing. And the other one, which I'm going to say, so maybe those who've watched this on TV don't know this, but a lot of people know that I've been driving a 1979.
Oh my gosh, you should tell this story. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've owned 3 cars in my life: a Beetle, a 1973 Beetle, a 1986 Volkswagen bus, and then excuse me, a 1979 Volkswagen bus.
Yeah.
And then another 1979.
So
VW
you really wedded
bus.
to the Volkswagen family.
I've been a total VW guy ever since.
Wow.
I have actually owned my Beetle before I even had a driver's license. So
wow.
I have been a VW guy my whole driving life since I was like 27. And I finally gave up my bus the other day.
Wow.
And it's towed away. It's in Attleboro, and it's not coming home anymore. Nope. But I will if all goes well, I will hopefully be driving a Honda Civic soon, which is reliable. A radical change for me.
Yeah.
Very reliable car, more modern. And it was actually almost comical when I was just giving it a little spin just to see.
You didn't know what to do with it, right?
I didn't know how to open the windows. I didn't know how to read the odometer. I didn't know how to
Bluetooth, which you don't know about.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, what are all these gadgets here? Yeah. I feel a little like frozen caveman lawyer from Saturday Night Live, So I'm entering the modern world. What airbags? Oh, yeah. Anyway, so those are kind of
don't try to use a payphone anywhere either, Robert. Okay, because they're not.
What is that still a dime?
You can't even find one for 50 cents, I don't think, because and if you don't have a cell phone, forget it. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are kind of big changes. So anyway, one thing, back onto the civic front, that I think I think we need to talk about this a little bit is that. So the day is coming soon, I believe on April 27th, when the Cambridge School Committee will make a decision. I'm not sure if they're going to make their decision, but they're supposedly going through their final interviews with the candidates for interim school superintendent. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the only reason really I want to talk about this is that, it is my strongly considered opinion, and I've heard much the same point of view expressed by other people as well.
Okay.
That the decision for who's going to be not just the interim school superintendent, but the school superintendent was already made, that it was going to be Victoria Greer, who, as far as I'm concerned, may be a fine choice. But that decision was made a while back. Okay. And I actually tuned into a school committee subcommittee meeting, the ad hoc one where they were talking about this. Where they actually talked about, well, can we just name somebody now? And so the point I want to make only is this, that if that's what you were going to do, I really would have preferred if you'd just done it then. Because putting together a dog and pony show and getting applications and putting together 3 finalists, one of whom has now dropped out because I think it's pretty clear this process is not really a process. That's just, look, I could respect, just make a decision. You should have done it back then.
Can I ask you again? I know I asked you yesterday, but my mind doesn't hold things in. He announced he was leaving in June, right? Or the end of June?
Kenneth Salim, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
right. So announced like around, back then, yeah.
And how long have they known that? I mean, it's been at least what, 4 months, 3 months?
Not that long, no.
Oh, so is that why they said it had to be an interim, because it wasn't long enough to find a final?
Well, I think maybe all it takes is one school committee member to say, well, I think we shouldn't be rushing into this.
Okay, but this is ridiculous. So you think she'll be the final person?
Yeah,
I mean, are they going to have another search? Is that what's going to happen?
Listen, look at it this way. There's no
like
way,
a lot of time
even though
money.
Ms. Greer is not effectively the superintendent of schools for Sharon anymore, because they basically told her, you're gone. They basically booted her, but she's still being paid for the time being.
Wait a minute. They booted her because she was seeking this, or they were going?
No. It's a matter of some controversy that we needn't go into now. But the thing is, so basically,
okay, I don't know any of this.
And she applied to be, I believe, the Arlington school superintendent as well, but didn't get that job. So anyway, there's no way that a person who's already been a school superintendent in a Massachusetts community is coming to Cambridge to be an interim school superintendent. I mean, let's get real.
Where was the other candidate? What's his position? He's not a superintendent, but
I mean, you can look at the names.
Yeah, but you're right.
As far as I'm, not only from my own instincts about this, but from what I've heard from other people, is that the other names were just there as formalities.
Okay.
It's kind of like when the Democratic City Committee nominates 3 names for election commissioner, knowing full well that the one person who's going to get it is the one person who's going to get it, and the other 2 are there just as formalities. I would not personally appreciate being made part of a process just so that people could say there was a process.
Yeah.
And again, I want to be really clear. I'm not down on the candidate. I mean, if maybe this will turn out to be
the process you're talking about is
it's like, come on, let's not pretend. I mean, I remember when there were issues about renewing a city manager contract in years past, where people would say, well, we have to go through this evaluation process, then we have to have the public part of this, and then we have to have all these interviews, and we have to bring in a consultant and a search. We got to, get a headhunter to go do this and do that, And it was always Tim Toomey who would say, I just want to remind everybody that all it takes is 5 votes and we can do it at any moment, right? And, because I think he wanted to at least remind everybody that, that if you're just going through the process for the sake of saying process, then come on, let's just be real. If you know what you're going to do, just do it. I can respect that. I really can. If this is the person you say, this is somebody we know from way back, or, honestly, I'm very forgiving about it. This is somebody I knew from high school. Like, we all went to high school with this person. This is great.
Yeah.
I'd say, fine, okay, that's your decision. Use whatever criteria you want, but don't pretend. I don't like the pretend part. It's annoying as hell to me. And and I hope we don't go through that when we go through the city manager process.
When is that happening?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? So, of course, that dovetails into yet another issue, which has to do with the pro and con sides of the remote world in which government seems to be taking place these days.
Right.
There was a preliminary meeting of the Government Operations Committee to discuss the process. Now, maybe they're doing all sorts of things in behind the scenes now, but there's no way anybody, including me, who usually pays pretty close attention to these things, there's no way I could ever find out really what's going on in terms of that process, or if there even is a process. Maybe if I want to get all buddy with one of the counselors, I could get some information on the sly, right? But it's not like there's any kind of a public forum where you sort of get any update on this. One of the points, I think I might have mentioned it on last show, was that, when we talk about remote participation and whatever, I think we may have spoken, I'm not sure now. this is at least the way we're doing things now for the city manager process. It's the bailiwick of the Government Operations Committee. Doesn't necessarily have to be there, but that's the tradition of recent cycles has been that way. It's not like you can, well, I tell you what, let me just go to the Government Operations webpage and we'll find out what they're up to. Because there is no Government Operations webpage.
You've talked about this before, how committees don't have they should have their own.
So the only way you find out what they're up to is after the fact, when they issue a report that then comes to the city council. Any staff or members of that committee, they're not just putting stuff up. They're not saying like, oh, by the way, during the week of April 24th to 28th, we will be considering the following thing, or we're going to be having some guests from here.
But all committee meetings, the clerk or someone in the clerk's office takes minutes, and they don't usually come out for at least 2 months, if that depends. And I know your argument in the past has been, instead of personal aides, perhaps it could have been people working on committees together rather.
Well, this is not strictly a matter of the city charter, because this is really just more like practices. But in my opinion, they really ought to restructure the way they do day-to-day business. City council aides should not be assigned to individual councilors. They should be assigned to the committees. And the work of the committees should be much, much, much more public than it is now. I mean, even the councilors, oftentimes they will complain because there are amendments being proposed on the night of the council meeting. Well, it wouldn't be a violation of anything, basically, to say, well, if as a councilor wants to offer an amendment, could you please post it to the ordinance committee site, so that everybody, including the public, will get a chance to look at it before actually it's formally introduced.
Is that where an amendment to anything would have to go to the ordinance?
I would just suggest it would be a good idea. Right now, we often don't hear about it.
We don't see it. Well, we see it if you're watching it.
And then you get a fuzzy, poor resolution
I can't read it.
Where those of us who are a little clever find ways of getting access to it.
You're pretty clever.
Includes sometimes taking a screenshot using optical character recognition to kind of extract the text.
Well, I know I've complained to you.
It's terrible.
You found those communications that I had put in one, and someone else did on one of the meetings, and I couldn't find it on the agenda packet, and you found it, and then I went to the video, and the video has a download for but it shouldn't be that way. They should appear in some more, add them to the. I don't know. Crazy.
That's right. Yeah. And I just think there are a lot of just sort of procedural deficiencies. But, these particular councilors love to look, sort of pat themselves on the back, for their, they're making everything remotely available. But the thing is in terms of the things that are potentially controversial, whatever, they're not doing much of a good job at all, and we're often finding out these things somewhat after the fact, anyway, it's a particular grudge of mine. Quite honestly.
No, that's a good point. I mean, it's just like.
But like, is it simple? Like, for example, if the Government Operations Committee has a notion, even just a notion, completely changeable, it says, well, during the month of May, we will be working out the procedures for how we're going to do the whole city manager process. We expect that during the summer months, we will be in touch with a headhunter firm or doing some big search or whatever. In other words, just a schedule, a completely changeable schedule that says this is how we're thinking about it now. It's nowhere. It doesn't exist. I'm sure they have that schedule in their heads. And
it should be public.
But you want to talk about democracy and public participation. Not that I'm a big believer that the public has to have a whole lot of say in the choice of a city manager. I mean, I've said it for as long as I can remember. That it is the councilors who choose their manager. It's not me, it's not you, it's them. It's 9 people who just decide who their manager is going to be.
That's kind of scary, though, depending on who's on the council.
Well, exactly. It is kind of scary, quite honestly. And the on the other hand, in normal times, yes, a reasonable city manager will demand a contract, right? And then if it's a term contract, you'll have to pay him regardless. But the state law does say that the manager serves at the pleasure of the city council.
Right.
And you can throw out a manager on at any given city council meeting. You could do it. They'd be crazy to do it. But the thing is that there's no prohibition against doing that. If there's an election, there will be an election come November, and if there are some changes to the composition of this city council as a result of that, and I'm not going to hide from the fact, I dearly hope there is. So there are some changes, right? But if there are some changes, then, as soon as they raise their hand and go through the usual inauguration procedures, their first vote could be to fire them, well, actually, I don't think I don't know if they'll even have the new manager, and I forget that it may actually be someone after
it's
that.
after. Doesn't his term go, is it only till January?
I think it goes into the next council term, but not very deeply into the next council term.
Right.
So, they could very well, they could just, 5 people could say, hey, we're going to appoint the head of human services as the interim city manager.
You're saying, so the search for the city manager is going to start, that has to start soon, like in the summer?
We go through this every time there's a contract coming up. We say, well, we've got to have a big comprehensive process.
National.
And I'm not a big fan of a big comprehensive process. I just say, look, if you really have an excellent candidate identified and you wanted to just spring that person's name and count to 5 on a given Monday night, and then so be it. I'm okay with that. I really am.
It'd save a lot of money.
I'll get, if you choose a nitwit, I'll be very unhappy. But it's still your choice, and make your choice. That would be fine. But what typically happens, they'll demand that there has to be this big extensive process, and then when it actually comes time they'll say, well, we're really running behind now, and we don't have time for this now here, so let's just go rush, and then they'll get it done, right? So, if you really believe in having the big mythical process, the intergalactic search, as I often call it, you really had to have already begun thinking about how that's to be.
I'm sure place. They have, whatever. Yeah,
but we would never know, would we?
Well, it's not. Yeah.
Well, true. Maybe it isn't. It's not our decision.
Right now, it's
I
not.
Agree with that. But if you are going to pretend as though you want the public's input in whatever, I think the public kind of would like to know. Well, should I start thinking about this now? Is this something I wouldn't mind? Participating in discussions about this into the summer months, or is it the fall, or is it next January?
But the public has nothing to do with it, though.
I know, but the thing is, they will go through the pretense that it is, just like it's happening right now with the school superintendent, where they have meetings with parents and interested parties and stakeholders, and then school department staff.
But that's true. We had the forums for the city manager. I just remember.
We always go, right.
Yeah, when Jay Ash was it Jay Ash and somebody?
Yeah, but I think Jay, but then right in the end, one of those, there were 3 finalists.
He dropped out. He dropped out.
Well, because he kind of knew that they weren't.
The writing was on the wall.
He knew that the votes were there for Louis, so that was that. And so, but anyway, I just think if you're gonna just do a quick process and just appoint somebody, I would rather you just do it. But for both the school superintendent and come time for the manager, just do it then, right? But if you do say you want to have a process, then you better start telling us what that process is, and give some sort of loose idea about the schedule of what to expect and when.
Well, we'll see. If anyone's listening to you right now, they'll do that. So anyway, okay, we have a few minutes left in this segment, so we should probably think about what we're going to talk about. Maybe there was a meeting last week that we didn't comment on. Obviously no meeting yesterday because of the holiday. But.
So in the second half hour, we'll talk a little bit more about some of those particulars. I think maybe there's one item, I think I may have actually talked about this in the past, but it's sort of a really kind of an irritant for me is the misunderstanding of some city councilors about what their role is versus city staff's role.
Are we talking about the legal thing?
Well, we'll talk about legal things maybe next half hour. But
Okay.
the thing is that more, like there was one time where I think it was Councilor Nolan raised an issue about whether
I
the
know what you're
city's
gonna say.
purchase of a bucket
Oh,
truck
God.
met
The
her
DPW, I
exacting
know.
standards for
Did
environmental
you really look
righteousness.
for a high? Are you telling me that there isn't any out there?
Yeah,
Yes, we did look.
and
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
not like our Department of Public Works is completely ignorant about
Oh, God,
environmental
no.
concerns. In
They have
fact, I'd say
engineers and everything. Yeah, I
and
mean,
they're way ahead of the game, in terms of
exactly.
this.
Yeah.
Yet they are being second guessed on the council floor on whether or not was it a biodiesel truck for a bucket truck, or how are you going to operate it? Will you be turning the engine off when you're operating the bucket?
Yeah.
Yes, Counselor, we will be turning the engine
No,
off.
John Nardone gave a really good description of how it works and kind of satisfied that. But even then, she voted no. So just out of principle.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm not trying to get down on this particular counselor here, but I think
Yeah.
there is an underlying point here about what the role of counselors are as policymakers.
Well, I guess in her defense, which is she sees herself as being able to see everything in the city that she gets to decide on through the lens of environmental sustainability. And so she, as she said, is doing that's what people elected her for, whatever, to do that. So she's doing it with, no matter what it is, she's got to look at it through that lens. So I guess you could say, okay, but it gets annoying.
Right, but and she's not the only counselor who does this.
No, that's true.
There is a line that you cross where it really is more like micromanagement.
Oh yeah, and saying, look what we should be doing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, hold the city manager accountable to make sure that his staff and the department heads and everybody else are basically adhering to the policies that you really believe in.
Yeah, this gets to the other thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago, which about the hiring of or the appointment of someone, and did you really apply diverse, all that stuff. So it's the same issue. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there are a few other matters having to do with boards and commissions I would like to talk to.
Okay, all right. Well, we will be back in a few minutes, right?
Yeah, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Cambridge Inside Out.